Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who is helping me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Laura Morlando, who addresses stress, its adverse impacts. It affected her life beginning with her father's cancer, which caused her to pivot as an entrepreneur from her corporate job into an online job, and she is self-employed. Her stress caused her to go through several aspects of life, and she has some very valuable insights into stress, as stress causing burnout, and it can cause a lot of devastating effects. Marty, what are some takeaways our listeners can gain from Laura?
Laura was upbeat and very inspiring. With all her medical challenges, she was determined not to let her diagnosis define her. In other words, she would not let her medical issues keep her from doing what she wanted to accomplish. And she did encourage others, when you're not feeling 100%, it's okay if you don't show up perfectly. If you're meeting with someone, you can explain to them, I'm not doing very well. We'll have 5 minutes, but I did want to meet with you.
And Laura has learned how to use stress as a motivating factor and help others overcome stress. Let's listen and learn together. Laura, it's great to have you with us. Our listeners are going to be really intrigued with what you have overcome. By your description, you have overcome some medical diagnoses, specifically autoimmune and Lyme's disease, but you've learned how to cope with by pivoting, by your own description, out of where you were to the new you, my terms. You have learned also to work with and overcome or learn how to deal with physical and cognitive challenges. And our listeners are going to be very interested in knowing learn how to deal with all this. Laura, it's great to have you with us.
I'm so glad to be here on the show with both of you, Rod and Marty, and to everyone listening. Thank you so much for joining.
Laura, can you give our listeners just kind of a brief overview of maybe just a little bit more detail of what I just described?
Absolutely. So 2 trajectory changing moments really defined where I am today. And so the first one was actually my father. He got diagnosed with cancer when he was at the most stressed out of his life. And I don't believe that to be a coincidence. And it was at that moment that Laura Morlando, the stress commando, was born. And so I started realizing there's a better way to show up. And I made a pivot in that moment to move out of corporate America into entrepreneur land because I realized I inherited my father's curly hair and his work ethic. And I realized he was reflecting the mirror of my future if I didn't change my ways. And I needed to take stress seriously and work more simply. And so I started helping other businesses, professionals, and entrepreneurs work more simply and really take stress seriously. Because let's face it, oh, I'm stressed. We say that and we dismiss it. And we dismiss it as if it's not a real thing. And I had just experienced it being a real thing. So fast forward. So that is how I became an entrepreneur. And what my mission was to help people who burn the candle at both ends not run out of wick and wax, so they don't have to go through and learn it the hard way the way I did. Fast forward, I did that for 13 years. And then that second pivot that you just described hit me, where I was diagnosed with 2 autoimmune and Lyme. And in that moment, I realized the simple that I was teaching before was not simple enough. It was too much for even my brain in that moment to be able to do, too much for me physically to do. And so now what? So here I am again, having to pivot 100% into the digital space because I could no longer leave the house. Now, first, I was a little defiant. I was defiant in the fact that I refused to admit this was going to be a long-term solution because let's face it, I have no patience. So I thought, 30 days, I'll get really good at what the doctors are telling me to do. I'll be done. I can put everything on pause. 30 days, I've got it. 30 days come and go. 60 days. Okay, 60 days. 60 come and go. 90 come and go. It has been 6.5 years. And I have made huge progress. But it all started with one decision. I do not have, notice you read very intentionally, I am diagnosed. And I won't even say it as an example. I refuse to own and be defined by the thing that I am diagnosed with. It's something I have to overcome. And it was something I learned from my dad. The minute my father was diagnosed with cancer and one of the surgeries that he had, it was supposed to be this ridiculously long surgery. It was experimental. It was all of these things. And he comes out of the surgery in like 2 or 3 hours. This was supposed to be a 12-hour surgery. So my mom and I knew this wasn't good. When he's coming out of surgery soon and the doctors are wanting to talk to us. And they said there's nothing they could do. The cancer was everywhere. They're going to close him back up. But they didn't want us to tell him. So now my mom and I, who really have no business ever playing poker, need to be in front of my dad and not tell him what's going on. And my father knew. My father knew that something wasn't well. And he's like, well, girls, we know today the first thing we knew the day I was born. One day I'm going to die. We just now know what's going to get me. He goes, so let's fight this thing. It was the biggest shock to just see how my father embraced it. He wasn't defined by it, and he lived in each moment. And so that lesson is what's helped me in this pivot to be present. And what's been so amazing and the best gift of all of this is for about 2.5 years of me figuring all this out. How do you pivot? How do you work more simply when simple isn't simple enough? How do you stay present and overcome the cognitive and physical challenges? And poof, we get into a pandemic and everybody is needing to be digital. I became in demand, and thankfully I was already able to share what I was doing so that everyone else that was struggling with how to make a pivot, how to not be defined by things, and oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. How do I keep moving forward and not be buried by this? So that is what I do today, is just helping people realize it is simpler than you think, and simple is not easy.
Yeah, wow, Laura, I so appreciate the vibrance of your voice, the speed, the exuberance. That is everything. I want to go back to your dad and just a couple of things that I'm picking up from what you're saying. Your dad, it seems, did not personify, I will be overcome by stress, I'm overwhelmed, and so forth. He just knew how to deal with life, and I use the term stuff. Stuff happens to us. But you said very eloquently, that stuff is not going to define us. We're moving on, and we're going to learn how to deal with this. Was there a point in your life where that wasn't as real to you as you're projecting it was with your dad? You picked up what your dad's resilience, I'm going to use that term.
Yeah. Now, that's a great question. Let me be clear. My dad was super stressed and overwhelmed. I don't believe it was a coincidence that at the most stressed out of his life, he gets a very rare cancer diagnosis, actually 2 rare diagnoses. I believe, this is not scientifically proven, I believe those were identical. in my family, we run with a lot of stress and worry and negative, and it's just something we do. But we always embrace things with humor and with I can do anything. I can overcome anything. I can be resilient. So we have both in there. So to your point, in that time, my dad was not supposed to last till the end of the year. He got diagnosed in November, end of October, November, and they said he's not going to make it till the end of the year. My father lasted 4.5 years, and in the middle had kind of a little bit of a remission. I believe because he flipped his brain into saying, you know what? The things that were stressing me out and that mattered and made a difference, all of a sudden don't. And in that same situation, I realized the same thing. I'm climbing the corporate ladder. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so old. I'm not married. I should have all of these things done. So I was shoulding on myself. And I realized all of that didn't matter. The time I had left spending with my dad and my family is what mattered. My brother, my mom, my dad, the four of us needed to stick together through this. And I knew that no matter what was going to happen from the resolution, as long as we got on the other side together, everything was going to be okay, even if it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to be. And so when I got diagnosed 13 years later, the doctors start asking the origin. They're trying to figure out the origin of the autoimmune diagnosis. And they said, this has been going on for a while. And there were just days and days of I don't like to use the word chronic, days and days where every day I was dealing with a migraine and different issues and pain. And I couldn't figure out the problem until the diagnosis of autoimmune. I'm like, there it is. That's what's off. But when they try to track it back, these autoimmune diagnoses have been running rampant. And they said, was there a point in your life when you were really stressed out in the past 5 or 10 years? I said, 5 years? I mean, yeah, I've had my daily stresses and the financial woes and the typical things that I think most people stress about, but significant enough to turn something like this on. I just didn't think that was there. And they kept going back and asking questions. I said, the most stressed out I've ever been is when my dad was sick and I became the financial breadwinner. Those 4.5 years were the most stressful of my life. And they said, Laura, it is possible that this autoimmune turned on then and has been slowly running rampant in your body, undiagnosed. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me right now. And so one of the things that's so interesting to me, to answer your question, is it's not the big things that you do. As the stress commander early on, I would tell people the big things you need to do to reduce stress. They're not eat better, sleep more, exercise more. Those 3 things, yes, work. But when you're the most stressed out, you hear those things, it gives you more stress. I know. I sat in those workshops when I was stressed out with my dad. I'm like, I don't want to hear I'm going to die. I don't want to hear that I'm overweight and eating bad. And you just get me through the day. How about getting me through the next hour? Can we do that? Because when you're already in an extreme stressed out mode, you've got to get really present and you've got to become very self-aware. And that's what I witnessed with my dad. And so when I got diagnosed, I realized, oh, all of those lessons that I've been learning have been preparing me for this. And all of these lessons to get even more simple. And when you're stressed out, to feel the feels, but move through it and don't sit in it. And what are the tools that you can use very, very quickly to flip it on its head and move through it are not going to only help me, my family, but on my clients who are super stressed out. And right now, stress isn't even called stress anymore. It's called burnout. So everyone who's even more stressed than before and burnt out, these tips and tools matter and make a difference, because if I can do it, anybody can. Now, is it a pill that you turn the light switch on and you're great, you're positive, you've got great energy? No, that's not how it works. But if you prepare, your prep will always show. And if you don't prepare, your prep will always show. So the lack of it will always show, which means you experience more stress, you experience more overwhelm, you get the thing that you focus on. So to answer your question, am I devoid of stress? Oh gosh, no. Does stress impact me more severely now, given what I experienced with the diagnosis? Yes. I have to take it so much more seriously, and I have to be present, feel the feels, honor what I'm feeling, and then find a way to quickly move through it so it doesn't completely defeat me.
I want to say, I don't think we realize that just a small little stress could cause so much. And then that autoimmune disease is with you for life then?
Yeah, so it is. But here's the thing. It is and it isn't. The diagnosis is true. And there's no cure for either autoimmune nor a cure for Lyme. However, all three can go into remission. I already have Lyme in remission. Okay. Lyme reactivated because I got stressed out. I wasn't paying attention to sleep and the things that I know to do. I pushed too hard, which is shocking. I push. It's where my dad was the one that would tell me I burn the candle at both ends and I would get defiant. No, I don't. Yes, I do. And I love it when I'm doing that, which is why I started to reach out and find more people like me. But what I am focused on is getting to remission on all three. It's going to happen. Sadly, it takes a lot longer than I wanted, but it will happen. And I've made huge progress. So to your point, is it something that I will experience for a while? Yes. Is it something that has forever shaped the way I look at life and the way that I move forward? Yes. In a very positive way. Because I've chosen to do that, I refuse to allow it to defeat me or define me, much like my dad refused to let cancer defeat and define him.
So you are a high energy person. I mean, it's obviously I can hear that in your voice. You inherited that from your dad. The other thing about it is I'm interpreting what you're saying is, okay, it is what it is. Whatever happens to me, I'm going to think through it. I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to move forward. I'm not going to be defined by, and nothing is going to keep me from moving forward. That's what I'm sensing, a mindset or attitude. Laura, have I mischaracterized you in any way?
No, that's pretty much it. I am high energy. I am both sides. As an introvert, I gain power from going within. So I'm not like this 24/7, but I choose to show up high energy because I know energy and enthusiasm are contagious. And I would much prefer you catch that than the woe is me. I do not want to focus on that. I do not want to be that in the world. That's not how I choose to show up. The high energy is my dad, but it's really my mom, to be honest. And so I choose to be a beacon of hope and light for everybody else and show up powerfully. That's my choice. Now, does that mean that I can operate in this mode every single hour of the day? No. So prior to this, did I need to have some downtime to power up so I had enough energy to show up strong? Yes. Do I already have built in recharge time so that I have the energy to recharge and to mitigate any of the physical things that I have to deal with? Yes. Rest and recovery are crucial. And when I wasn't dealing with this, I didn't build that in. And that's one of the things I find working with entrepreneurs. They just keep changing the hat that they wear. They keep moving forward and they do not recognize the power of stress, the power of rest, and the power of recovery. And by rest, I'm not talking sleep. So they don't understand that you have to build these things in, or life's going to happen and you're not going to like how it shows up and it stops you in your tracks. Trust me, you're not going to like it. So if you do not take a preemptive strike and control of your own life and destiny, maybe I'm the mirror for you that my dad was a mirror for me.
Here's something very important for our listeners to take from what you're saying, and this is what I'm interpreting, and certainly correct me if I'm not assimilating what you're saying correctly. You are not at the high energy, let's say 900 miles an hour all day long, but you can be for, let me just pick a time frame, 2 hours a day. You're going to be at your peak at whatever time of day for that amount of time. And when you need to be at your peak, you'll schedule those activities at your peak time. And let's just say the other 22 hours of the day, you're going to do whatever you have to do to rest, recharge, and operate at the high energy level. One of the reasons I'm saying that, Laura, and I want to make sure that I'm not misinterpreting, is some of our listeners may think that, well, Laura's just putting on a front. She just described herself as being an introvert, but no, this is not a front. This is who Laura is, but she's not this way 24 hours a day. Put that in your own terms if I've mischaracterized anything.
No, I think that's perfectly stated. We are not one thing. That would mean that I am the one diagnosis, but there's more things. We are complex human beings. So both things can be true. We need to embrace the word and. I have this diagnosis and I can show up powerfully. And here's something I wanted to really state. And I share this a lot with the entrepreneurs that I work with. You will always give your 100%. I will always give my 100%. 110, 120, that doesn't exist, but 100% does. But here's the catch, what I've had to learn. My 100% right now in this moment is going to be a different 100% an hour from now, 2 hours from now, 4 hours from now. So it's going to look more like an up and down roller coaster ride, but I will always give you 100% of what I have in that moment. And I think that is something we need to give ourselves grace. That's another word I've had to really embrace, is the grace to realize 100% doesn't mean operating at this level of intensity 24/7. No machine on the planet can run at a high level. Your car can't, your computer, everything has to have a rest, reset, restart button. We do too. And so we need to recognize, shift our mindset. Don't should on yourselves and put an expectation, especially as an entrepreneur, that we need to operate at this really high level. 100%. What's my 100% today? Here's what I need to do. Here's what I can do. Two totally different questions.
And I think it's very important our listeners know, I'm going to use the term self-awareness. I know
Yes.
who I am. I know what I can do throughout the day. I may not be able to do as much today as I did yesterday because of whatever, but I know who I am. And that to me is self-awareness. I like what you said. I'm going to operate at 100%. I'm just going to use a very elementary analysis. My 100% yesterday may have been 100 pounds per square inch, but 100% today is only 30 pounds per square inch. You're going to get my maximum output on each day.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. And if you want to have an example of it, so just I can prove the point. So if you go to one of the companies I have is Down and Dirty Networking. If you go to the YouTube channel of Down and Dirty Networking, go scroll and look at one of the first videos. I have been on YouTube and I've done a lot of videos. I can show up powerfully like this. But when I started doing YouTube with Down and Dirty Networking, I was still overcoming things. I no longer could actually top of mind do a YouTube video. As a speaker, I had already gotten out all the ums and the uhs. Unfortunately, the uhs were back as I was trying to think and get over the cognitive and the brain fog, and words will just fall out of my head. So what you will notice, and I will show this very roughly, what you will notice is you will see every now and again this thing kind of pop up here on the screen. And for those listening, what it is a piece of paper enters the screen. Proof, I had to write the script because I no longer could rely top of mind. So yes, I'm reading. And sometimes I lose the ability to read. And so you'll see when I lose it and I just keep going. I wanted to build the muscle and see what I could do. Now start watching maybe a year later and watch the more current videos. Right now I'm going live. I have an outline, but I'm going live like I used to prior to diagnosis. So it takes time. It takes progress. Work with where you are and with what you can do. There's always a way. So back to that resilience, nothing will stop me. I will always find a way forward. And forward doesn't mean to take 10 steps. It's my forward. My forward might be different than somebody else's forward. So just know that you can move forward too. You can ask for help. You do not need to do it alone. So if you're feeling like you're on that island of alone, I've got you. You're not alone. You don't have to do it on your own, and you're good. And you can do this, and you can do this with help and with grace, and it will have the impact that you're wanting to make in the world.
You just really answered my question. But I think also you have to come to a point where it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to take a break.
Yeah, Marty, that's so true. And here's the thing, as a female minority growing up, the rhetoric that I heard is you had to be 150% better than everybody else to be considered average. And having grown up in a male-dominated industry, I found that to be true. And I have story after story after story after story about that. That is true. But that mindset did not serve me and does not serve me right now. Because to be perfect, nobody can do it. It's exhausting. It will drain you. It will by default cause stress. So what I will say is you have to release perfection, embrace being authentic. You can be positive and authentic. There are days that my clients will call me and I'm looking like Popeye because I've got the migraine kicking in and I'm not feeling so good, but I knew what was going on with my client. I'll call in. They're like, hey, is this a good time to talk? I got a migraine. So if I make no sense and I'm slurring my words, just afford me some grace, but what can I do? How can I serve? And they'll tell me what they need. I solve the problem. I give them 100% of what I have in that moment. They're like, oh my gosh, take care of your migraine. I will. So glad I could help you. Moving on. Phone hang up. Okay, now I'm out again. So to your point, it's making sure that you give yourself grace. Yes, it's self-awareness, but realizing you can tell people what you're going through. And I hope anyone listening to this, I hope if you have one takeaway, here's what I want you to take away. I give you permission to be a human being. I give you a permission to ask for help. I give you permission to not be okay. I give you permission. Permission granted. If you were waiting for the sign, there's the sign. It doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be done. Take imperfect action, and done is better than perfect. Impact is better than holding all your gifts to yourself and not creating the impact in the world that you're doing as an entrepreneur. So keep moving forward. Don't minimize yourself. And I promise you, you've got this.
There's an aspect of being very genuine, being human, as you put it. I'm going to ask you to be somewhat vulnerable. In your description, you said you have learned to honor or recognize, deal with physical and cognitive challenges. I'm going to interpret that as your self-awareness says, I might not be able to do physically. I may not be able to do mentally what I used to be able to do, but I know what my peak times of the day are. But I'm curious. Again, Laura, if I have mischaracterized anything, please put it in your own terms, but our listeners need to know that.
No, you have not mischaracterized it. Early on with diagnosis, I could barely put 5 minutes or 10 minutes together. For the first year to 2 years, for me to get out of bed took more energy than I had. While I was going and recovering through Lyme and getting Lyme into remission, it was really difficult. It was very dark emotionally. And that's all I'll say to that. I don't want to give any more energy to that. It was very dark emotionally. The anxiety, the depression, everything was pretty severe. Taking a shower took more time than anything else. I was in ponytails most every day because I didn't have the arm strength to do my hair. And it was like, okay, all I can barely do is put it in a ponytail and ball cap. This is what I can do right now. And so you do what you can. And I wasn't on Zoom. I wasn't seeing client appointments. I was too embarrassed to be seen that way. And people were checking in on me. And I finally said, you know what, this is as good as it gets today. Today, this is 100%. And so as people were reaching out to me, wanting to hire me to do things, I took it as a gift. And I said, it's time to show up vulnerably and authentically and say yes. And I did. And people are like, oh, I'm so glad you're so casual. I'm struggling. I'm struggling right now. I'm dressed up, makeup's done, hair's done, because this is for me to show up confidently and powerfully so that my energy is on track. But when I'm with my clients, I give them permission. We're going to have a safe space. We're going to show up authentically so we can have a more meaningful conversation, so we can have a more meaningful way of moving forward, and we give each other grace and permission. So that's what I would say was the blessing. And it's why I say the word I honor the cognitive challenges and the physical challenges, because they've taught me some great things and allowed me to give permission to the clients that I talk to or anyone listening right now to say, wow, I don't have to show up perfectly. You don't. You absolutely don't. You do you. You do what you need to do to move forward. And that's going to be the right answer. And you'll give people more permission to show up that way for themselves. So yes, it is about moving forward. And yes, it's about showing up powerfully, but it isn't about showing up perfectly. And it's about being, yes, self-aware and doing whatever your 100% is in that moment.
Your self-awareness, if I think I heard you correctly, occurred over what, a 6-year period or so before you learned who you really were. I'm talking about self-awareness. Is that about the length of time it took for you to, I'm going to use the term, reckon with yourself?
Actually, it's been longer, and there's been various chapters of that book of self-awareness. So chapter 1 of self-awareness actually started when I was in corporate America. And I realized, though my parents said very great things to my brother and I, what we modeled was the way dad treated dad and the way mom treated mom. And so we had this very negative self-track, not because that's what they told us, but because that's what they modeled. And so I realized I needed to adjust that narrative, and I started putting the work in. Fast forward to when dad was sick, I realized there was another chapter of being written as a caregiver, and my position in the family was changing. And so I started working on what that awareness would be. And then through the years, it was a lot of coaching, self-awareness work, coaching work. And then when I got diagnosed, everything I thought I learned, and I thought, ooh, I'm master of self-awareness. Yeah, no. I almost felt like I was starting over again. I was like, oh, really? There's a whole few more chapters I need to learn here. What I've come to realize is you can't compare, and this is a saying from one of my coaches, Chris and Jen. They say you cannot compare your chapter 1 to somebody's chapter 20. Comparativitis will get you every time, gets me every time. And when I realized where I was and what chapter I was on, and I'm comparing to somebody else, that's when the shitting on yourself would come in. And so to answer very briefly for everybody else, self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and it can start at any time. It's never too late. And it needs to be an ongoing. There's no finish line. And there will be more chapters and more chapters and more chapters to your self-awareness. And it's a matter of being able to put all of that together. And the more that you allow those chapters to occur, here's what's the cool part about all of that. As an entrepreneur, as you evolve, so does the evolution of your team, and so does the evolution of your business.
There are several takeaways I've got from what you're saying, and thank you so much for being so candid. Journey, it's never a destination. We're on a long-term journey. You are continuously adapting. That's a term that I use as I'm listening to you. And call it an evolutionary process that what was maybe a couple of months ago is not necessarily what it is now, that you're just continuously growing, adapting, and loving life. I'm not trying to be overly flowery with anything. That's what I'm sensing how your life is.
Yeah, I will find the joy in every moment. That's something my husband and I say to each other when we part. I tell him, find the joy in the day. And I always look for the joy in every moment because it's there. I can look for the pain. I can focus on the fact that pain is really high right now. I don't choose to do that. It doesn't mean that the pain's not there, but I'm enjoying this conversation. I'm enjoying talking to the person listening to me on the other side. So I will get myself out of my own way to deliver impact, because that's how I want to show up powerfully, is to make sure that I do that. And here's what I'll leave you with the last couple of minutes that we have here. I will say this. What really tripped the cycle for me was probably about 7-8 months ago. I am helping all of my clients as a marketing consultant streamline their junk drawers of marketing and really align things to themselves. And yet some of the things my clients were doing, they can move a whole lot faster than I can. So I'm a little bit slower behind in the way I implement for my business. But the ideas are sound, the strategies are sound. I'm like, man, must be nice that they can move that fast. They can post that fast. And poof, I finally get a training that made sense for me about AI. Thankfully, with AI, the cognitive challenges that I have, the physical challenges that I have to show up in the digital space, all got solved the minute I saw this training. This was a blessing twofold. One, the tool of AI, and two, the fact that my brain finally clicked and could see a path forward when previously my brain had been locked in because of the cognitive challenges. So what I will say to anybody, if you can't see a way forward, don't worry. The dots always connect looking backwards. It's a quote from Steve Jobs, but you might want to leverage AI systems tools. There's always a smarter, better way to do things, so that what I say is Laura not needed. I want to create as many strategies as possible where I can do the things that I love with the least amount of energy possible, have the greatest amount of impact, the least amount of energy possible. Laura not needed means I got to take out all of the things that make me crazy, that are energy drains, mostly administrative tasks. And if I can streamline that so I can be doing more of this, things that I enjoy doing and having impact and having conversations with you and your listeners, I want to be able to do more of that. And that's what AI has been able to do for me, and why I've been able to launch a community to help others do the same thing.
That is a great segue. I want to ask you, and it's not really appropriate to ask while we're recording, but I'm going to anyway. Would you consider another episode, now that we've discussed stress, but AI, for those listeners who may not know, artificial intelligence, how can we reduce the stress through artificial intelligence? Would you be willing to come back and discuss that just a little bit further, Laura?
Absolutely. I feel I have unlocked the code, and I love making things super simple. And so for those of you who might have had a resistance to AI, or maybe you're in it and you're like, I don't get it, it's not really doing anything for me, it's just another shiny object thing, I would love to come on and be able to unlock that, decode that, and simplify it for you.
First of all, I like AI. I really do. I can get on there, I can put something in and word it much better than I could word it. On a personal note, and you don't have to answer this, you said you say to your husband, have a great day, or excuse me if I didn't say it just right like you say it. I'm sure there are couples out there, he's got a different personality than her and maybe going through this same thing. How do the two of you work it out?
My husband's the quiet, he's not the talkative type. We are absolutely polar opposites, but he dated me when my dad was sick. So he knows where my heart is. And I would not be able to live with myself if, when I said goodbye to him, it was the last time I said goodbye to him. Mm-hmm. And my mom taught me that she would do this with my dad. So I do it with my husband. I say, God bless you. I love you. Knock him alive. Find the joy in your day. Those are the 4 things that I say every morning. Even when I was sick and couldn't get out of bed, I would be like, oh, he went to bed. I needed to sleep longer. It's like, dang it, the day's not right, I would get on my phone and call him, or I would text him, I forgot to tell you. Or when before diagnosis, when I was traveling and I would miss him in the morning, it became a game. Who could text each other the saying the fastest in the morning? Who got up earlier to text it to each other? And it's just a matter of making sure that we are making memory-making moments for whatever works. So each moment is a present. Unwrap it, enjoy it. Don't be thinking too far ahead and too far behind, because you're missing the present. And that is the lesson I learned with my dad, and I learned in a lot of other situations of loss. Stay present, make the memory, solidify the moment, and you will be so glad. You will live without regret.
Very
Laura,
good.
we
Very
look
good.
forward to another episode where we explore AI and how that can help us reduce stress. Thank you so much for everything you have to offer our listeners.
You are so welcome, Marty and Rod. I appreciate you so much, and I look forward to part 2 or maybe more. Thanks,
Oh,
everyone.
yes.
If you're
Yes.
listening, make it a great day, and everyone listening, find the joy in your day.
We love it.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life's experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and DISC personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.